Hey there, Mark Brown. Can you remember a time when you had to do a completely new presentation and you had a very short time span to prepare?
Yes, I can. I won't go into it today, but definitely yes.
So we're sitting down with our friend, our colleague, Sheree Cain-Jones, and we're going to go deep and had a great conversation, Mark, just a few minutes ago. I was like, oh, you got to come over. We got to do a podcast. So let's do it.
Anyone can give a presentation. Few deliver unforgettable presentations. What's the difference? You're about to find out. Welcome to the Unforgettable Presentations Podcast with your hosts, world champion speakers and coaches Mark Brown.
Your life tells a story, and there's someone out there who needs to hear it.
And Darren LaCroix.
Stage time, stage time, stage time.
Ready for some powerful presentation ahas? Let's dive right in.
Hey, Mark, you know the story. When I was at a TEDx event here in Vegas, Sheree was the MC, and I was there seeing one of my coaching clients, and Mark Camp, and she came over to me and said, I listened to your podcast. And here you are. Now you're on it.
Here you go.
So
welcome, Sheree.
It was just a few weeks ago, Mark. Sheree had invited me. She was delivering a sermon at her church. Now, she's not a pastor. It's not her normal thing. She's a speaker. And we were just having a conversation over at the coffee shop. And I was like, ooh, you know what? New content, short notice. I bet some other people would relate to this. Now, she was going from giving a secular presentation that she does all the time to a sermon. Mark, we talk about this sometimes. We have some pastors on here, and it's a different ninja skill set when you literally have to do a brand new presentation every week.
Indeed.
Now, a pastor builds up that muscle and has that ability to do it every single week. But when you put on the spot and then all of a sudden, okay, showtime, I just thought it was a great conversation. And since you just lived it, we figured we'd dive into that with you. So welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And first, I just want to thank you, Darren, and you, Mark Brown, for having me on this podcast, because this podcast has been going on for several years now. And I've actually reaped so many benefits just from listening. So thank you. It's an honor, high privilege. I'm excited.
And I love that she had the opening memorized, so she was mouthing it.
I can help myself.
Nice.
Wonderful.
Right. So give us a situation. So what's your normal topic that you speak about?
Confidence, self-development, and vision. And so what ended up happening is my pastor's wife, she sent me a text and said, hey, can you preach? And I said, I looked at it and I looked at the time limit and I thought, oh, holy hot dogs.
Gonna need some Holy Spirit on this one.
And I just looked at it and I thought, you know what? Let's do it. I'm going to put myself up against the wall and let's see what comes out. It's going to force me to create a new skill.
You know, it's interesting, Darren. When Sheree says, I speak on confidence, self-development, and visioning. Confidence and envisioning success under that kind of pressure is really interesting because, you know, we're not trying to cater to anybody or to proselytize. But when you find yourself, and Darren, you and I have been in the same place where we're called upon to fill someone's pulpit. Within a church environment, that's a very serious, awe-inspiring responsibility, which we don't take lightly. Now, please, friends, do it.
Mark, when the meeting planner is God, there's some more pressure. Just saying.
Well, I don't want to minimize those who may not share our faith. Don't think I'm minimizing any assignment. But with the mindset that we have, we hold that in such high regard. We mean, okay, we want to plan for the long term for this. So I'm really curious, Sheree, how short was short notice for you?
It was maybe about 9 days or so. So it's pretty.
Wow.
I don't think it was quite 14. I'd have to look back, but it was like 2 weeks. Yeah. It was a short enough time for me to wonder, you know, how am I going to do this?
I guess you called back on your confidence and visioning. I envision success. I can do this. But you said your first thought was to balk. Do I really want to do this? And the point I want to make from that is, look, all of us at some point in time may find ourselves in a place where, ooh, can I really do this? Do I have the chops? Do I have what it takes? And I'm very curious to hear how that thought process developed, what it led to, and how you were able to find new content in that short notice. And of course, everyone wants to know eventually, don't tell us yet, how it all turned out. So you get this assignment, you got 9 days notice. Now, what goes through your mind in that moment?
Yes. So I'm not sure if it was exactly 9 days. It might have been a little bit more.
Roughly.
Was first I clicked unread, and I said, let me just come back to it. So that was the very first thing. Then I went back and I read it, and I just tried to take it in and let it sit. And initially, it felt heavy.
Okay.
Pressure.
Already, I'm making a note here because I'm seeing a simple process. When faced with this daunting task, stop. Breathe. I had to stop, I had to think, I had to take it in before I do anything else. And the caution I receive from you, Sheree, and we pass on to our listeners, thank you for this, is just initially, when facing the overwhelm, pause, think it through, take some time. If you're a person of faith, pray on it. But I really admire the fact you said, stop, think about it, and take it all in before you make a decision. That's wisdom. Please continue.
The second thing is that it was an inconvenient time. It happened to be my anniversary weekend.
Ooh. And the plot thickens. Hey, Darren, do you hear the whole storyline here? We always say, escalate the conflict in the story.
Wait, I gotta get the dun 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 dun.
You got to escalate the conflict on that. So it's your anniversary weekend. Pastor's wife asked you will you fill in and do this for me? So now, how was the thought process progressing, Sheree?
Yes, my thought process was progressing. How do I ask my husband? This is our 23rd anniversary.
Wow.
Congratulations, by the way. Congratulations.
Thank you so much. Thank you. And now I'm weighing. Now this opportunity is not only is it inconvenient, there's a time compression, and there's also pressure about the people I'm going to be serving. Because I'm not just there to speak, I'm there to serve, and whether or not I have the capacity to produce something that will serve them.
And if you're listening to this, it's one thing to be put on the spot to give a Toastmasters presentation when there's no pressure at all, and it's 5 minutes or 10 minutes. This is 35-minute sermon in front of a church that you attend. So these are your peers, but there's also brand new people coming in for the first time who, how well your sermon goes may or may not encourage them to come again, which is the whole reason we're there. And so, again, it doesn't matter the stage. What we're trying to focus on here, we're just using a specific example, but trying to focus on, hey, you got to deliver new content. 35 minutes, this isn't a 5-minute thing, and in front of an audience that you care about. So even if you're doing something in front of your peers, say in your own presentation association, so your own association, whatever association you belong to, like that's the stakes are there. So 35 minutes, now you got to deliver, and you have 9 days to write and internalize it.
All of the things. And not only that, this confident, powerful, dynamic woman is wondering, am I going to fall flat on my face? Am I going to embarrass myself?
I suspect that's a question many of us have asked and sometimes still ask yet again. So how do you handle that?
It could be a story about confidence down the road.
Could be like, but this story right here, this is a great story. This is wonderful. Yeah. So you want to, okay, pressure's here. I don't want to fall on my face, but you haven't responded to the email yet, have you?
I have not. So I just asked my husband, I said, hey, like, this is what happened. Because at first I was going to say, no way can I do this. It's not enough time. There's too much pressure. But then I said, no, wait a minute. What have the greats done? I remember Les Brown saying that he would put himself up against the wall and it would force him to develop and be another person. So I had a conversation with my husband and I said, hey, this is what it is. And after I took some time to breathe, and it wasn't 5 minutes, it it was a little while. And I just said, it might have been overnight. I'm trying to remember because it was all so fast. But I said, no, I think I can do it. I think I can do it. I think if I do this, then I will prove something to myself that I can do something under pressure. At least that was my initial thought. And I'm up against the wall. Man, maybe I'll be like Darren and Mark.
So the self-talk took over and you began to develop some confidence.
Specific passage to talk about, or what was the assignment? Or, well, let's go back to, did you accept? Or
I did, yeah.
How did that go?
I said, yes, let's go. That was my response. I was like, let's do it. Come on. Like, I'm going to do it. I'm going to, but I'm saying this, and all the while I'm going, how's this going to happen? I don't know.
It sounds, Darren, like what I've heard some people say. Say yes, then figure out how to do it.
Figure it out. You have to
figure out how to do it.
Yep. All in. Burn.
I have a question though, real quickly about that, because the factor of the anniversary and your husband, you consulted with him, had a heart-to-heart conversation. Can we assume that he was supportive or he was tentative? How was his response?
Yeah, thank you for asking. I think that's a great question, Mark. He was very supportive. And I would say that anybody who is doing this, who is in my position, you have to have support, because you have those times where you're just so unsure. All you have is your own voice. And I believe in the concept of the echo chamber. Sometimes we're in an echo chamber and our worst thoughts become our best thoughts. So it's important to have incredibly supportive people in your life, whoever it is, spouse, friends, neighbor.
Dog like Zoe. I don't know.
I was just thinking that.
All right. So you committed now? What's step one? Did she give you a subject, or?
Yes, she gave me the subject. She gave me the passages in the scriptures, which is so different because usually I pick my own subject.
Right.
If I'm going to speak on something, my own passages, like whatever it is I'm going to do. So this is very different. It's like your teacher saying, hey, here's the subject, write a paper. I'll see you.
And when you saw that, were you familiar enough with the subject matter to say, I got this? Or what was the process to prepare it to make it as good as it would become?
Wow, that's such a great question. I was familiar with the passage, very familiar with it, but I had never taught on that passage before, maybe in a generalized way, but not so specific where I'm pulling out principles, pulling out examples, and pulling out my own story. Now that I had not done. So that was a challenge of having to just knowing that I was going to take something and create something that was 35 minutes. It was a little bit intimidating, to be quite honest with you.
And did you use a model, a structure? Did you use a Fripp model, or?
I'm crazy if I didn't. Crazy sauce. Feel like the comedian with no hope just going up there. No, absolutely not. I pulled out that Fripp model. I said, okay, now I need to, we got to get it together. I pulled that thing out and began with the premise. It didn't begin with the premise, but brainstorming, but I was looking for what is that, I call it the pregnant premise.
And what does that mean by pregnant premise?
Okay. The pregnant premise is what is that overriding idea that I want to now deliver. So the premise is like I've had 4 kids, so maybe I think in terms of but to me, the premise is pregnant, and what you want to do is take your points and facilitate the delivery of it. That's the way I look at
pregnancy delivery. That makes sense. Now we're going to study some obstetrics next in our next podcast. No, I'm friends. I'm kidding, friends. Don't tell us any nasty emails. Yeah, but I like the idea of the pregnant premise being everything is there's a gestation period, short though it may be, where everything kind of comes together, and then the delivery of what comes out is the newness, the richness. And you touched on something without elaborating on it, and I want to ask you about this, Sheree. I had seen it before. I was very familiar with it, but I'd never gone that deep to find all the value and the I'm paraphrasing your own words. What that speaks to me of putting in the work to do the research, to go deeper, as Darren says, go deeper in the topic so it matters. So therefore you can deliver that with wisdom, with clarity, and give the audience value. And friends, viewers, listeners, how that hit me was it need not be a sermon or based upon faith or religion, but we are required as presenters to do that work, to dig deep, to find perhaps what nobody else has found, to invest the effort to provide our audiences the value that they should derive from everything that we say. So I really appreciate you saying, I knew it, but I had to almost know it more. Mm-hmm. It's a principle for all of us. You may know your subject matter, but how deep are you willing to go to give value to your audience? And that was powerful. So I'm learning already. I'm taking my notes right here. I'm doing well. You can all keep talking. I'll just make more notes here. This is good.
So what was next? You got the structure. You start filling it in. Tell us more.
Research. Because looking at a scripture, so I come at it from who I am. So I'm working on my doctorate. And so I approach things with a research mindset first, because I want to be curious and not assume that I have the answers, of course, especially to something like the scriptures. So I had to be willing to be a learner of the material that was given to me and
be a student again.
Be a student, yeah. And almost like put on my hat of humility and say, okay, what is it that I could learn? What is it? And ask. I had to ask the text questions. So I said, who am I in this text? Where are the people? What do they do now? What is stopping them? Why is it stopping them? And I'm looking at that text trying to answer the questions that anyone would have regarding that text, to investigate it and not just look at it, but be willing to put away my ideas of what I thought.
And I want to jump in real quick. If you're listening to this, Mark, if you notice too, those questions that she asked herself based on the content, doesn't matter what the subject is.
Exactly.
That could go to any subject, like who's my audience? Where are they at now? What are their challenges? Perfect. Even though we're talking about a sermon here, it's the same. Like, we've got to understand, why are we there? Why do we have this privilege? And how can I serve them? So just wanted to hold up the mirror. Brilliant.
Excellent principle to point out.
Boston, you're wicked smart.
Wicked smart. Yeah, wicked smart.
And the other things I did was I'm a lover of etymology, so I love words and understanding the meaning of a word.
Language.
I know, rhymer.com.
Word nerd. Here we go. Word nerds unite. All right. Yeah, I love it.
And so I had a dictionary in one hand, my thesaurus, and I really wanted to capture, what do these words mean and what would it mean to them?
That's powerful. And as an aside here, for those who may not be familiar with how many biblical scholars operate, they'll use a Bible with 7 different translations, and they'll go to the Greek and the Hebrew text word by word. They look for, G105, what that word means, what the context was, in order to give their audience the deepest value they can. And this is a principle. It begs the question, how deep are you willing to go to serve your audience? How deep are you willing to go to serve your audience and to find out the etymology, the background, the context of each word? What's the deepest meaning of the particular text? If we all approached our preparation for our programs that deeply, I think we'll be pretty much unforgettable. So what did that process do for you and for your congregation as a result of all that in-depth research and that humility that you approached it with?
Any other steps in the process? So,
yeah, that's a great question. I think also capturing stories, just like to be honest with you, with the FRIT model, looking at stories. But now, when you're speaking in a congregation or with any group of people, because you're on stage and the stage is elevated, there is almost this power distance that can be created. And sometimes people can come off very sanctimonious, like they're high and better and greater than you. And so my heart was to be very close to them. So I had to make a decision to give a very vulnerable story of mistakes that I've made, just in my life, and one of them being road rage.
Mark, it was a great story. I was like, what? But you're Sheree, come on. It was super transparent. And that's one of the things I wanted to get to too, is finding those stories from your life that connect to the topic, the wisdom that you're trying to get out there. But if you come off as holier than thou, they're going to think, well, it's easy for you, and it's going to distance the person listening to you, and then takes away from your purpose. So I really admired that you were, and I was literally sitting there because Mark, she invited me to come see that. I don't know if you regret it after I said yes,
I'm so
but
happy.
I was like, whoa. I mean, it was powerful. It drew me in.
What I find interesting there also, Darren, you use a well-used term, holier than thou, which I know speaks to one's perhaps arrogance. And because it's a sermon base, the holier than thou isn't so much about being involved in a sermon. The idea is, are we seen as the authority and the expert, but do we show that we are the expert in a sense where the audience may feel we are so full of ourselves, we are so overly confident, they don't see us as cocky, because the line between confidence and arrogance is paper thin. And we can exude confidence, self-development, and visioning. We can exude confidence without being arrogant. And I love the fact you said I had to put on my hat of humility, to position yourself with vulnerability and transparency to tell this kind of story so the audience can see the human in you, not just the person elevated on a platform who's in that holy place in the church. It's a spot where you speak from. But when you speak from your heart and deliver your message with your own story and your own experience, what did you learn in terms of the impact of using that particular technique with the congregation?
One of the things I learned is really, I'm a fan of Brené Brown. Vulnerability is that people enjoy vulnerability. The thing about vulnerability is it doesn't always feel comfortable because there's risk. There is a risk for the speaker. And I think that's in any situation. There's a risk for the speaker that they believe that they're going to be viewed a certain way, because you only want to show your best foot forward. Because let's just be honest, you go out on a date, man, if you don't shower, you're showering that day. Like, you're going to pull yourself together.
There's my problem.
Single guy. Okay, Darren.
There's a risk in being vulnerable. And so I remember the author of A Great Storytelling. I'm trying to remember her name. She's been on the show. But one of the things that she said is just to make sure that you can tell that story.
Kendra Hall.
What's her name?
Kendra Hall.
Kendra Hall.
Yeah.
And she really does talk about the power of story, but making sure it's not a story that you're maybe still struggling with. You're far away from it. There's been some transformation. But even then, even if you've been transformed, you're a different person, there is a risk that you're going to be perceived a certain way. But I just think that where there's no risk, there's no reward. No risk, no reward.
How many iterations do you think you did if you had to look at them as separate scripts?
Oh my goodness.
How many versions? Just ballpark. I just want people to know that great speeches aren't written, they're rewritten. And this is just getting us to version 1.0 live.
Wow. So the way I did it like mashed potatoes, where work on the intro, then work on the middle, work on the beginning and the end. Maybe 9.
Okay. Wow.
I was reiterating the day before, to be quite honest. The day of, I had it in me. It's in me. It is me. It is not a message that I'm speaking. It is me.
Part of you.
It's that internalization that Patricia Fripp talks about and that you talk about as well. But so many iterations that you're nearly shocked at how much it can change.
But a lot of people just get something down and then they go internalize it. So I wanted them to hear that you don't internalize it until you've done it a few times. You've worked it out. You've read it over. You've caused it and tweaked it and blah, blah, blah. So let's talk about your internalization. What do you do to try and, once you get it to version 9, now you're a couple days away. How far out did you start internalizing it?
Oh, geez, Darren. It took me a while to get it out. I call it digging for a miracle.
You're funny.
That's what I'm digging. Like, just because, I mean, I'm speaking on behalf of heaven, it doesn't mean I didn't have to work. Like, I was
right.
digging for that miracle that with the shovel the size of a spoon.
Digging for a miracle.
But to internalize it, I did what you say. I recorded myself because the very first time I did it, garbage. Garbage. It was terrible. So I went through those emotions of, oh my goodness. But once I finally got the flow, I recorded myself. And then I re-recorded myself. And then I re-recorded myself. And then I listened and I said, oh, I could say that better. Ooh, that sounds a little odd. And I re-recorded myself and I listened to it when I was driving, when I was working out the day before. I always listen before when I'm working out because it has to be me or it's going to come off inauthentic.
Yeah, Mark always says, we write for the ear, but we also have to write for our own voice. And so I love what you're doing here, that you had a version, you recorded it, and then you go back and listen. And for everyone, this is the lesson here. When you step back as an outsider, an audience member, and then you listen, you're going to hear things that you didn't hear while you were saying it. Now, there'll be some moments that you want to fix because you heard it while you're saying it. You're like, oh, that's awkward.
Yeah.
I'll fix that later. But there's be other moments that you read it, sounds fine, but then you listen and you're like, I would never say that, or I would never say it that way. So I just want everyone to understand the process of getting there.
There's no way I would do it without recording it.
But some people don't know that, and that's why.
Yeah, maybe because I've been listening to this podcast.
Touche.
Maybe that's why, because that's where I got the idea to record myself.
Appreciate that.
And then take notes, and then I also would say it to my husband, hey, how does this sound? And just ask. Again, putting on that hat of humility and being willing to take in the fact that I don't know, I'm not perfect. Wow, look at there.
Yeah.
Well, with the limited time you had, you did wonderful audio recording. I like the fact you would listen on the treadmill when you're running or you're listening in the car. That's wonderful. Did you have a chance to do one video recording before you delivered it, or it was all audio rehearsals?
All audio. It was all audio.
You look good anyway, right? I'm going to look good. It's really fun. No. The reason I ask is your time window was narrow. And you took advantage of every opportunity you had to not only record yourself, but to listen to it with the intention of what?
Refining it.
Refining. Okay.
Refining.
Interesting you say that. A client said to me today, I want to refine my speech. I can engage and work with them to refine their speech. But you were trying to make it better, to refine it, to sharpen it. Because here's a risk that we can run as presenters. And I can confess being guilty of this. It's good. Yeah, that'll work. That'll be fine. But going back to the objective, you want to do the best you can. How can I refine it? And now here's a question for you. When did you determine, okay, I'm not going to make any more changes. I'm going to lock this in. This is going to be it. I'm good to go. Or were you tempted to go, well, I could change that. Should I move this around? Did you go through that sort of process in your mind of wondering, do I freeze it here or do I keep refining it as time grew closer?
Well, as time drew closer, it was going to be what it was going to be.
There was a deadline.
There was a deadline, but I knew the structure, and I felt comfortable with what I had, with what I'd been given. I didn't have 30 days or 45 days or 6 months to refine it. And so I think it comes to a point where I have to give. I'm not a perfectionist, but I realize it is not going to be perfect.
Okay.
They weren't going to change the service times because you weren't ready.
Yeah, you're never ready. I don't believe in being ready. I believe in being prepared. Because
I like that.
When I say ready, I mean like you've had all the feels and you feel like you can go out and chase the world. I felt very prepared. I knew I had put in the work.
Confident.
I felt confident. There you go. And I had let it marinate. slow cooking. Well, slow cooking in the preaching world, but letting it marinate and then letting it just kind of speak to me personally. That adds a different flavor. Now it's not just Sheree's. Now it's not just a message. This is my message to serve you, not to speak to you. I'm here to. I want to serve you. That helped as well.
Now, you were delivering this on Saturday night and then twice on Sunday morning.
Yes.
So I came, Mark, on Saturday night to see you. So tell us about how you were feeling, like just before you went up there or the day before. Like, tell us about that and how you dealt with it.
Yes. So the day before, I felt good. Like, is this okay? It's going to have to be a lot of positive self-talk because this is my first time doing this in a general assembly. And so there is a weight of pressure as far as the honor and privilege. It's a different than anything I had experienced before. And then the day of, I felt fine. But then I had the jitters before, I did. And I just respect it for what it is and know that my body's getting ready to speak. I still felt prepared, but I did feel, it's not like I felt great. Like I'm this, like watch this, y'all watch out now, she gonna preach. Like no, I didn't feel like that. I felt very humble, like, okay, I hope this goes okay. You were right there with me, thank God you were there.
I remember how Mark Brown helped me and turned into the cheerleader just before. So I knew my role had changed just before. Now, when I reached out to you on Sunday morning after you delivered the second and third time, and this is a reminder to everyone, you're doing new content in front of a new audience, a new situation. If you get to do it a couple times, the first time it's like, it's good. But now it's almost like you can breathe. You can breathe. So how was it between session one? Hold on, Mark.
Pause.
Okay. I don't remember.
Okay. Well, I'm going to ask a question here about that Saturday night, Sunday morning, because sometimes you're prepared for the first one, you deliver it. Did you receive any comments from parishioners or congregants after your Saturday night sermon?
I did. I received quite a bit of positive feedback on Saturday night from the people that were there. So that was really nice.
And how did that help you?
Mark, even on, Saturday night, people were totally engaged. It was a charismatic church. They were calling out to her and she was calling out to them and they were calling back to her. And I was like, yes, there was some just brilliance. And
excellent.
We had a little conversation about this, that you said the next day you have more fun.
I did.
Because you can ease up. But for everyone, we want you to know this is normal. Like, you can't always nail it that first time because you care. You want it to go well. You care about the audience and you're still in your head a little bit because you're internalizing it still. And then that next time it's like, all right, it worked. Now it's going to work better. And you deliver from a little different essence, if you will.
Yes, for 100%, because it's letting go. So there's these 4 principles I've heard. That the first thing is that you study until you're full, and the second one is you let it marinate. And in my world, it's you pray until you're hot, and then you let it go. And that's the hardest thing I think most speakers deal with. Is letting it go. And so Sunday morning, just because I had it, you have the message in you. You are the message. But it's letting it go, letting it flow, letting it be.
I'm curious. So Saturday night goes well. What becomes different for you going into Sunday as a result of how well Saturday night went?
Well, one of the first things was that Darren was there.
It's always good to have support in your corner at times like this. I mean, we're laughing. It's fun, but you may find yourself, viewer or listener, you may find yourself in a place where you need that ally. You need that friendly face. And them being there to offer the first words of encouragement can be just what you need. But what did you do differently for the first talk on Sunday morning as a result of one, Saturday night's presentation and the responses you got? If anything at all, what did you do differently?
A few things. One, Darren gave me some great advice, which we are supposed to do as speakers,
Okay.
which is we don't narrate the story, we act out the story.
Okay.
Dialogue.
Helps, yes. Become the characters. Okay.
Number two, there was a time issue with the time clock. And so that got fixed. And so that helped because Saturday night I'm looking at the clock and there was pressure and I was not, there was a miscommunication, which those things kind of happen.
Can happen.
And then number three, I let it go. Like I'm there to serve. So lights off me, lights on you. And now I can let it go because it's not about me.
Okay. Well, one more thought then. So Saturday night goes well. First sermon Sunday morning goes well. You're going into your last sermon of the series, so to speak. Is anything different in your heart and mind going into sermon number 3?
I was ready. I'm like, I love this. I love the people. I want to serve them. And it was very interesting because I have never spoken 3 times in one weekend under a time constraint and under pressure. So I didn't know this, but the service started at 11:30 and I spoke at noon. And all of a sudden, right about 12:15, my body said it's time to go to sleep.
That's interesting.
What happened to you? But it is quite
Yeah.
uncomfortable. When all of a sudden you're exhausted from all of the work you put into it. And my body said, yeah, hey, it's like this big dose of go to sleep came over me. So what I did was I asked the audience, I said, hey, your girl has been preaching. This is my third time. I'm going to say amen. You say it back. Preach it. And I asked for their audience participation and just asked them to engage and lean in. And it helped. It did help.
That's smart on the spot. So we got to wrap this up. What's some advice that you would give somebody who all of a sudden they have to create new content and they have short notice? What if you're sitting over coffee and I asked you, hey, I need your advice. You just did this. What would you tell me over coffee?
100%. I would tell you over coffee is number one, I would use the FRIP model. Friend, where is your model? I would tell you to get that model out quick. And then the second thing, I would say bring who you are. Don't
Bring yourself.
Something that you're not. I'm not a theologian. Gangster theologian, maybe, but I'm not a theologian. So you bring who you are. And more than likely, you have strengths that you don't even recognize that you have that you incorporate. So I coach, I lead, I love, I incorporate that into the message. And then the last thing is you actually are the message. You are it. It's and share a part of your story. And that makes it more authentic, regardless of where you're speaking, at a Rotary Club, at a Toastmasters, at a keynote, at a church. It doesn't matter. Bring you to it.
All right, Mark, Mr. Recap. Before he does that, we hear the wisdom that you dropped for us. If someone wanted to reach out to you or follow you, where would they find you?
They can just go to my website, ShereeCain.com, ShereeCain-Jones.com. It's my name, ShereeCain-Jones.com. And they can connect with me there. And I would love to help you wherever you are.
And you
And
have
that's no hyphen, correct?
platforms.
You can find me on Facebook. You can find me on Instagram. I love people. Let me know.
And the name has no dashes, no hyphens, correct? It's all straight.
No
Sheree
hyphens.
Cain-Jones. Excellent. So what has Sheree Cain-Jones told us about delivering new content on short notice? Well, if I can read my own handwriting, I'll need my glasses for that. Isn't this so bad? Okay. When you first face the situation, stop, think, take it in before you decide. Okay. Especially when you're dealing with pressure, for time pressure, and the audience you're dealing with, prepare yourself. It's always wise to get the support of those who will give you good advice. Appreciate and respect the weight of the responsibility. And you said this one in different words. We can all find reasons to say no, but find a reason to say yes. Because you had so many reasons to say no, you didn't do that. Lean on your support group. Be wary of your own echo chamber. Find that pregnant premise, have a research mindset, and be more curious about your subject than you currently are. Dig deeper. Put on your hat of humility. Use personal stories. Be vulnerable and transparent, because vulnerability creates risk. But don't forget, the message isn't in you. The message is you. In practice, record, listen, re-record, listen again, and refine as much as you need in your rehearsals. Realize you will not be perfect, but be prepared. Always study, let it marinate, pray on it, then let it go. Let your message speak to you. Bring you to every presentation and incorporate your own personal strengths. Then you'll deliver an unforgettable sermon or presentation. Does that sound good, Darren?
Bam.
That's all you, Sheree.
Bam.
I'm like, man, I need to carry you around with me everywhere. You make me sound good.
Sweet. Well, hey, thanks for listening. And that's how I met you. And now, boom, look at you go. So I was very inspired by seeing what you did, knowing you had new content, short notice, and man, talk about confidence. Mark, you got to see her on stage. Powerhouse, dynamo. Those are best words that describe her on stage. So
just send me a video link, man. Just send me a video link. I'll watch it.
Because I listen to Stage Time. Hello. That's what happens when you listen to the show.
All right. Well, hey, thanks for being here with us. Really appreciate it. Mark Brown, always good to work with you.
Thank you.
And thanks for listening to this podcast. And hey, maybe you'll be a guest someday. Thanks for being here. We'll see you next week.
Yeah.
Hey there, this is Darren LaCroix. Thanks for checking out this podcast episode on YouTube. If you want all of them, not every one is on YouTube, check out your favorite podcast platform so you don't miss an episode. Keep being a sponge so you can be unforgettable.
Check out StagetimeUniversity.com, where good presenters become unforgettable.